Dr. Morrison, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful experience. And I'd like to ask, did you have to get informed consent signed from your patients or the parents to practice?
Informed consent?
Yeah.
Oh yes, definitely. That was part of the all of the research projects. First had to have
Informed
consent. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
If I say correct, Dr. Luchetti? Luchetti?
Luchetti.
In terms of practical information, like the daily practical, being put in practical, the doctors in Brazil, you showed the video that what is being done, but what in real terms, what is being doing? What the doctors are accepted already?
Okay. We face some challenges in Brazil in introducing the spirituality into healthcare. It's very difficult, I think, worldwide. Here in the US, I think it's a little bit easier. There are a lot of universities that are incorporating spiritual issues on medical schools, on nursing schools. But in Brazil, for instance, we published an article recently in the BMC Medical Education pointing that 10% of the medical schools in Brazil have courses dealing with spiritual issues. So in the United States, for instance, more than 75% of the medical schools have such courses. So we have some challenges to overcome, but I think it's getting easier for us to introduce this issue to especially the spirituality. The spiritism is even more difficult to incorporate into the Brazilian medicine. Did I answer your question?
Yes, but what I feel is kind of there is kind of a contrast because Brazil, in terms of spiritism, there's many people involved, and I feel sad for the resistance from the medical field to accept that. That's my frustration, because it's Brazil, for instance, if we think of the September 7th, Brazil Independence Day. So I heard the executive director of Inter-American Development Bank saying, we are a lucky country, lucky citizens, that we make peace with like a sort of 11 other countries with no war. No, we are peaceful people. We want to see the progress. And I feel sad that in terms of the medical field, is still this difficulty to see it coming harmoniously and smoothly.
It's interesting because Brazil is a very religious country. We can see from the census, the demographic census, 93% of the population has some kind of religious affiliation, for instance. 99% believes in God, for instance. That's some results that are similar to the US. And we are incorporating some of the... In other words, we tend to copy a lot what the United States do in medicine. And we are starting to copy the spirituality in healthcare. So I think it's going to change in the next years.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you so much for being here. It was wonderful. My name is Abigail Francisco, and I have a question, excuse me, to you, Dr. Morrison. You mentioned that you sense, a lot of people sense good and negative energy. And you said when you sense a negative energy, you let that negative go through yours. And Kirsten, we Spiritists, we believe that sometimes you put a field on front of us, but it's not complete a field. We change our elevation of thoughts. but I'm very curious how you manage to let all that negative go through you, not leave any bad residues in your field.
I think it's probably a little similar. You said you raise your level of thought. Well, it's a little similar because what you want to do is have your energy field like well endowed, like well pumped up, you know, and to have that, especially outer area, very fluid, we could say. So as things come in, you can let them, they don't pass through necessarily your body, you see, but to pass through your field. There are times when doing certain kinds of healing, like perhaps to remove some negatives or thought forms or whatever from the body, that you would allow something to come into the body actually, but we have training that then allows it to like exit out one of the chakras, exit out one of the joints. So the idea is that I don't put up a shield or a barrier, because then I can't merge, you know, then I can't actually merge with another person's energy if I'm blocked. And there are many different ways and points of view, and different, you know, varieties of doing things. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Daniela. The question is almost the same as Abigail, actually, for the two doctors. I tried when I was 17 to work as a volunteer with people living with AIDS, and I would go and talk to them. I have a way of talking to people and relating to them, and that was the easy part for me, and they would benefit a lot from it, but I would come back home like a mess, and I was too young, and I didn't know how to protect myself. And I often heard from people that I had to protect myself so I could help more, but I couldn't help to be very involved in each one of those cases, and some of them were really hard, and I was just volunteer. I was just 17 years old. I didn't have any preparation for that, and I would like to know of Dr. Morrison how you can also not be vulnerable, so you'll be able to help them out and care. So that's the reason that you do that, because you really care, and not be as involved that you let your own energy down. That I was very skinny, and I wasn't eating, and I was kind of depressed because I was absorbing all of the problems, like feeling like they were my own. And I felt that I couldn't do that anymore, you know, for my health as well.
Yeah.
So I would like to know. And when she kind of answered it when she said that she put this shield and that she would elevate her thoughts and that would help her to help others. And I would like to know, how do you guys still care and still relate, but don't let your own vital energy, because I have to go home and go to my kid and my husband, and I would like to start doing something like this again, but I'm afraid of letting go to my kid and my husband and let my energy go down again. So.
Is that for you? Who was that?
Both of you.
I can address it first, and if you would like to go. It's kind of like this. Surgeons never go into an OR, the operating room, without preparation, right? They have their whole thing. So likewise, when we go into volunteer and we think that it's so randomized and I'm just going to go and do, no, we also, at least from a Spiritist perspective, we need to protect ourselves, through prayer and understanding. And also from a scientific perspective, there's an area in our brain called the amygdala, right? We'll just say, respectively, it has to do with our emotions. Then we have the front part of our brain that deals with cognitive and our thought processing, right? So when you're listening to someone tell you their problems, you don't listen emotion to emotion, but you just listen with your thinking part of your brain. You don't tune in. You can be sympathetic without sort of, taking on their emotion. And there's something called, if I don't confuse you even further, mirror neurons, right? Where you feel what others are feeling. And that happens, right? But if you're able to listen to someone and not be where they are and also, and be in desperation, because then we don't help. But if you perhaps pray prior to going, asking for spiritual assistance, and also know the field that you're going on, studying some more, a little bit about spirituality and Spiritism would be my suggestion. But whatever you feel comfortable with, but to protect yourself also, and to also better serve the patients that you're going to see, to offer them support. That would be my answer. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I'll take the next question.
I want to thank you all for some wonderful presentations this morning. And Dr. Luchetti, I wanted to just reflect with you a little bit and ask a question about your research, especially as Dr. Schwartz was contemplating the difference between the research he was involved with and the research you were involved with. Having been to Brazil for spending quite a bit of time and looking at what Spiritism is doing, especially the mediumistic meetings, it comes to me that the word sintonia is something that one of the gifts that Brazil has to give our language. I don't know of any other word in the English language that approximates it. And the way I think about it is harmony magnified exponentially. And as I've experienced it watching mediums doing the mediumistic sessions, there's a tremendous amount of syntonia that happens in preparation for people doing the work. So it occurred to me that part of the positive results that you might have achieved was because the group that came in, the Spiritist group that came in, might have known each other and have developed some syntonia prior to doing their work with the bacteria. And that could have led to the positive results you have. Whereas in the United States, our model is more individual practitioners, let's say in Reiki, working on their own to impact whatever it is that they're focusing on. So I just thought that might be a possible variable. You suggested to Dr. Schwartz that it might have something to do with the connection that they had with spirit. And of course, that may be so. And it's very difficult to measure at all. But a reflection I just wanted to share was the possibility that it could be this other variable, I think, that comes in with a Spiritist work very strongly, but is not mentioned very frequently, which comes to me as syntonia. I don't know what else to say in English. So do you think that might be a variable?
Yes, we don't know. Really, it's very difficult to understand what's going on. I think the study from Rubik and Dr. Schwartz found a positive result also. It's a different kind of context. So we really don't know if there is a difference between the Reiki and the Spiritist Pasi. At this moment, we don't know. As a scientist, I could say that we have no evidence at all to say this, to tell this difference, you know. So I don't know if Dr. Gary Schwartz would like to give his opinion.
First of all, I would like to also comment how clear and beautiful and inspiring the collection of your three presentations were. And I think this comment actually directly or indirectly speaks to all of them. And that is, one of the things we did in our research, partly I was concerned about this, was addressing the health and vitality of the healers when they were coming into the laboratory. Because the question that I wondered about was, to what extent was their emotional state and their health state potentially going to affect these bacteria which were attempting to recover from the stress that they had been put on, because they were in part killed by the heat stress. And so we gave a simple questionnaire, which asked people to rate their physical, emotional, and spiritual health literally upon entering the laboratory. And then we would look to see whether that emotional state and health state was a variable that influenced the outcome of the results. And on the average, we did find, as you mentioned, that we did get a statistically significant result. I mean, 70% of the time, the treated cells showed the improvement in recovery compared to the untreated cells. However, 30% went in the reverse direction, which meant they were literally being harmed by the presence of the healer. And the question was, how do we account for that result? And when we split the data in terms of individual differences when people came into the laboratory, because on some days, some healers, they were connected, they were healthy, they were not fatigued, and they described their health as being vibrant and present and so on. But on other sessions with other healers, they may have had a challenge in their household. They may have been ill. They might have had stress with their children or whatever. And so they were coming in not in an optimal state. And what we discovered was that accounted for a significant portion of the differences. So if they came in a warm, loving state, the effect that they showed positive results. But if they came in not in an ideal state, they were not feeling well, they were fatigued, they were stressed, actually it produced the reverse effect in the cells. And this was, by the way, very unpopular with the Reiki community. They did not want to hear this. Because what their hope was, and their belief system is, it doesn't matter what my state is. All that matters is that I hold the right intention and that I engage in the appropriate cognitive process. But I think, and of course all of you were saying, that our state is part of the process. Our energy is part of the process. And of course the cells can't discriminate. All they know is they're being exposed to the totality of the energy and intention that they're with. And so that puts greater responsibility on the healer, the healing environment, the portable healing environment because we need to bring that to the context in which it works. And that may relate in part to, I think, that, it sounds like that's very consistent with this Spiritist tradition.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gary Schwartz. I'm sorry, but we're closing the question and answer session. You still have a question you can approach. She can still answer? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you all for your presentations. Kirsten, like you, I'm a nurse, and I'm recently studying Spiritism. I'm wondering, are there any initiatives in the United States to bridge information about Spiritism with American nursing? And if not, any recommendations on how to approach that?
Specifically with Spiritism and bridging nursing, not that I have found, but it would be my life goal. And if you'd like to join me amongst others, I definitely could do that. But there are, Dr. Barbara Dawsey, along with her husband, they do so many things, and I could sit and talk to you later, the time permitting wouldn't allow me. But yes, there are a lot of spirituality that is being introduced and has been introduced into nursing. Yes, there is. They're just not calling it Spiritism.
Thank you so much. Before we go for a lunch break, I just have a quick announcement that we have received some new titles of books for sales. So please take your time to check them out as you exit the auditorium. We are going to have a lunch break until 12:45. So please kindly come on time for the beginning of our next session.